this stopping of traffic in a city where the overwhelming majority of people are exercising their peaceful protesting. You're getting in the way of 99% of people's own message of love, of unity, and also a moment where they can express their frustration. And whether it's the media, whether it's public property, whether it's private property, don't lose the message here. The message is that Los Angeles stands as a great hope. Los Angeles stands as a place that actually can get things done and a place that is unified. You know, I would say vice versa too. Look, it's going to be very easy for you guys to find somebody in town where there's a protest and a counter-protest, and the hottest heads yell at each other. I've been watching it all night long. It makes good TV. But it doesn't necessarily represent who we all are. And it is incumbent upon us to not have the most radical supporter of Donald Trump who says hateful and odious things represent every person who voted for him, any more than the people who are jumping on the freeway or on a news van or spray painting a wall representing the thousands of people who say that this person doesn't represent who I want as my president. The Republic is strong not because we don't have extremes, but because the center holds. And for me, what is important for us all to understand in Los Angeles is that we have a space for this not only to be said, but for us to do something about it. This is a place where we led the nation in immigration reform in the past. This is a place where social and economic justice and raising a minimum wage occurred. This is a place that's investing in public transportation and jobs that are good for the middle class. This is a place that has stood for all the things that we're protesting for and not just against. But I will reiterate, there's no place, you know, the media is an important part of First Amendment rights. An attack on the media and on their property is an attack on the very thing that we are protecting for everyone out there. So that small minority, cut it out.
Mayor, is there a fine line, in your opinion, between what a lawful protest is and unlawful? And did last night cross over that line?
No, look, a protest is a protest. We always try to work with people. There are spontaneous protests and there's planned protests. We like to do planned ones, but where there's spontaneous ones, we do our best to protect people's rights because sometimes things happen in the world and spontaneity occurs with people needing to get out there. That's happened since the beginning of this republic. That's happened long before we had television cameras, and that's something that is a core value of our city. I'm less concerned with whether they're spontaneous or not, but whether individuals can cross the line and do unlawful things. I don't believe protests by their nature are ever unlawful. There's actions that people take that are unlawful. But expressing your feelings, we encourage that, and we also want to channel it into the kind of change and what we can focus on in this city and in this country for the next 4 years.
Because the LAPD made it very clear today that they are going to take almost a zero-tolerance stance. You go on the freeway.
Absolutely.
And
that is against the law.
Even to a point of marching in the streets. They're going to monitor that very carefully. Do you agree with that?
We monitor to protect people, but getting on the freeway absolutely should and will be dealt with as swiftly as we can. Now, freeways are big, and if there's enough people, it's tough to hold a line back. But again, that shouldn't be the story. The story should be, if we want to change the world out there and make sure that our voices are heard, it shouldn't be that we know how to stop traffic. It's that we stand up against racism. It's that we stand up against sexism. It's that we stand up against Islamophobia. It's that we stand up against all these things that we have seen in this campaign. That should be the message, not that I can stop traffic. You and I could go and stop traffic, but I don't know that accomplishes anything.
Yeah. When you see 3,000 people take to the streets last night, how closely are you in communication with the LAPD? Are you on the phone?
Yes.
Are you talking this morning to figure out
Yes.
how to move forward?
Yes, absolutely. From before and during and after, regular communication with the chief, with other command staff, my own staff. Actually listen on the radio some of the time to what's going on as well on the radio, on the police radio. So we're monitoring very closely, and also in communication with other cities to make sure we're all kind of adopting the best practices. I want to err on the side of giving people the space and the place to express themselves. I wasn't. I was encouraged by it. You know, I think a lot of people in a position like mine are supposed to be stressed out. I actually thought it was a beautiful expression of democracy. I think it was a marvelous thing to see the next generation of this country get engaged and involved. I want to turn those people not just into protesters, but to doers. We're going to need them to do the things that we need to do in this country and in this world, and certainly in this city. So I was encouraged. I think it's great. And we have plans to, I should probably speak about this too, to really channel some of this into activism, whether it's sitting down with immigrant rights activists and looking at what we can do to continue in my Office of Immigrant Affairs and with the school district to inform people about how they can get on the path to citizenship, what their rights are, not to fear LAPD. They're not coming into schools to grab kids out. But each year and each generation, you have to teach that. And in this election, especially, people's worst fears are there. We're sitting down with civil rights groups and seeing, what are the next steps. We're planning with our transportation advocates. How can we start getting jobs to people who don't have jobs to show as we move Measure M forward? What do we do to accelerate, now that HHH has passed, an involvement not just of the city and the county, but all of us in ending homelessness? So I think this is a great moment. We have to make sure we don't break too many bottles during it, and at the same time that we channel it into constructive actions that we can take. And it is so easy for us to confuse on any issue a very vocal minority who takes some certain actions as the protesters. They're not. You know who they are. We see them out there. They're our brothers and our sisters. They're our co-workers. And to folks who did not vote for Hillary Clinton and who voted for Donald Trump, we need to reach out to them too. Even though the numbers, it was less than a quarter in the county of Los Angeles and probably even less than that in the city of Los Angeles. I think the frustrations that people have out there are universal, and we have to figure out a way to model to come together. Don't just reach out to somebody who's of a different color skin or a different gender or a different religion. Reach out to somebody of a different political party. Have those conversations and see where we can move forward together. We will need that. I take the president-elect at his word. He says he wants to bring us together. He has some work to do there, but we certainly want to do that with him if that's what he wants to do. Our work is too urgent to look too much towards the past. We need to look at the future and what LA needs. And I expect him to be a president for all of us, and if not, we'll hold him accountable.
Mayor, was there any point last night when you were watching, and you said you were proud of what you saw?
Yeah.
Was there any point last night when you said, okay, come on, enough's enough?
Well, I always worry about people's safety, and of course, when people are on the freeway, for those individuals, it's, especially as most people who probably were on the freeway for the first time dispersed, when certain people stay there the whole time and just want to get arrested, that becomes the story instead of the story being, again, the expression of the values that we hold. So, of course, I think most reasonable people, especially you look at people who are lined up trying to get home for an hour, these are probably working people coming home from restaurants where they've been working, coming home from being our teachers, grading papers. We have to be there for each other as well. And certainly getting on a freeway isn't a way to win people over to our cause.
Because no one should construe what you're just saying today to go out and protest.
No, people, if they feel that, we will protect their right to do so. That's different than getting on a freeway. And we will continue to have spaces and places for people to gather and to express their First Amendment rights, absolutely. That's the decision that each person makes themselves, but I think it's great to see Americans come together and to peacefully protest for or against things. That's a fundamental part of our democracy. Yes. Hold on, we'll go here and then we'll go second, sorry. Yep. Well, I'm not going to make those judgments. I've certainly been a protester on the streets before. I felt that pull. But eventually, we need to get on with actually doing things. I think it's important. There's a certain strength that you feel, especially at moments when you feel, as many of our students do, they wonder whether this is their country. And it's a moment where they reclaim it, that this is very much their country and this is their city. And when they see their fellow classmates around, white, black, brown, Asian, they can feel the power of that. There's absolutely a place for that. But we also want our students to graduate. We want our students to, we don't want their parents to be worried. So we're trying to protect their rights to do that. I'm not going to make that decision for any person. But I do believe that long term, what's beautiful about Los Angeles is we have space not just to protest, but to act on the values that we hold. And that's something that we'll continue to do while allowing people to do what they've done since the beginning of this republic. Yes?
So let me first say, before I respond to that, is as hard as yesterday was, to stand here with the mayor and to stand here with this group of clergy behind us, this is a very hopeful moment. And I hope that hope kind of spreads out to our schools. I hope that our students will have the chance to listen to what the mayor just said about democracy. I'm really proud to stand with a mayor who understands a teachable moment, and the words that he just expressed about our democracy hit me as a former teacher really, really in my heart. In terms of discipline, whenever you miss a class and that absence is unexcused, there are consequences. And those consequences may differ slightly from school to school. And the superintendent right now and myself, our main concern right now is the safety of all children. So we are not going to spend a lot of time worried about what the individual consequences will be for missing class, but whenever you miss class and it's an unexcused absence, there are consequences. And as I've said to students over the years, let's remember that this is not the first time that our young people have expressed their voices with their feet. And there have been very, very important moments in the history of our city where that has happened, from 1968 to 1994 to 2006 to this very moment. And there's always been consequences. And what I say to our young people is that you should own those consequences. You should embrace those consequences, because you should embrace those consequences, because if this is important enough to you, should know that there are going to be consequences for that. Then you should know that there are going to be consequences for that. They will not be devastating, monumental to anyone's graduation trajectory, but certainly we expect that that's what will happen in schools.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Of course. Let me remind people who are worried that, I've gotten this question a couple of times, suddenly LA is going to be cut off. We pay taxes to Washington, we will get programs back. That does not, never stopped, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, in the White House or in Congress. Even under President Obama, when the houses were controlled, both houses by Republicans, sat down with people like Jim Inhofe, who's proud of being the most conservative ranked member of the United States Senate, who is a big believer in transportation infrastructure. We found common ground. We talked about things that we both worked on. Americans should be Americans and find the common ground that unites them. I don't walk around just with a D on my forehead, and he doesn't walk around with an R. We're actually people, human beings, who happen to register as certain parties or as independents. And I think for all of us, we can find that common ground with any president and any administration. I look forward to finding that common ground with President-elect Trump. I think it's going to be important for America's success. Think about the cities for America. Our ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach are responsible for 43% of all the consumer goods that come by sea into this nation. So that means that in every so-called red county and blue county in this nation, they need to have a successful Port of LA. And our modernization efforts are critical to this nation's security and economic success. Our airport brings in so many visitors that come to every corner of the United States, the number one destination origination airport in the world. The work that we're doing now that Measure M has passed, we absolutely expect federal dollars to continue to be a part of that. That's good jobs, that's good for business, it's good for everybody. We may disagree about certain other things, and we tend to speak up and speak out when we disagree. But I've disagreed with Democrats who've been in the White House. I've disagreed with Democrats on Capitol Hill. And I don't usually lead with just that. We try to find the common ground to achieve the common good, and we will do that with President Trump.
Mr. Mayor, if you weren't the mayor, would you feel strong about this issue during the protest?
Yeah, maybe I would have been out there, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a time, look, where I want to speak as a father, because Steve mentioned this for our children. This was a traumatic election. There's plenty of division, and there's finger pointing both directions, but the things that were said that are not partisan, about women, about our Muslim brothers and sisters, about immigrants. This campaign started, remember, with singling out Mexicans and Mexican Americans. Those have a very long-term and traumatic effect on people. And I hope that President-elect Trump can do things to repair those words that have been said and to be an example. We in leadership should be examples. I've quite often organized, whether it's protests or acts of civil disobedience before I was mayor, when I was council member. Those are an important part of participating in our democracy, especially when you see things that are fundamentally un-American. And I think what we have to try to do is to find some common American ground again. America is not a place where we denigrate women. America is not a place where we tell people that they're not qualified to serve because their parents come from Mexico. America is not a place where we mock disabilities. And certainly not the America that exists here in Los Angeles. So I intend to continue to show people America doesn't just exist in Washington, D.C. In fact, Washington, D.C. is the last place that it exists, so it's the last place it goes to. It is a reflection of each of the communities, including this biggest city and the biggest state in the union, and the big things that we stand up for and who we are. But yeah, I saw people out there and I thought it was beautiful, and I certainly probably in an earlier incarnation would have been out there expressing some of that frustration too. Yeah. Yes. 28 28, and let me remind people who are worried that, I've gone this question a couple times, so most of the delay is going to be cut off. We pay taxes, so for folks who think that we'll get through now, I think some students might have gone down there, they were dispersed, they took the dispersal order and left. Some people who really wanted to be arrested, they got arrested. 28, whether it's a Democrat or May, have done that before, in the White House or in Congress. Even under President Obama, when the houses were controlled, both houses by Republicans, sat down with people like Jim Inhofe, who's proud of being the most conservative-ranked member of the United States Senate, who is a big believer in transportation infrastructure. We found common ground. We talked about things that we both worked on. Americans should be Americans and find the common ground that unites them. Look, we will not only with the D stand up, and he doesn't for every walk around with an R. We're actually people, human beings, who happen to register as certain parties or as an young person, and for every person that is a resident of this city. We're going to join together with cities across the nation, as we have done, mayors who have come together to make sure that we can protect you, that we can make sure that I think for all of us, we can find that common ground with any president and any administration. I look forward to finding that common ground, to making sure that everybody, I think it's going to be important for America's success. Think about this city for America. It's who we are. In Los Angeles, over 50,000 people just in the last few years who we've helped walk towards citizenship. So that means that in every red, so-called red county, we all know in this nation that they need to have a successful Port of LA. Modernization efforts are critical to this nation's security and economic success. That is logistically brings in so many visitors that come to, and here in Los Angeles, we want to engage the number one destination, the reason that we can actually solve this problem. The work that we're doing now that Measure M has passed, it doesn't work for those who are federal dollars to continue to be a part of that. That's good jobs, that's good for business, it's good for everybody. We may disagree about certain data. We in leadership should be examples. I've quite often organized, whether it's protests or acts of civil disobedience before I was mayor, when I was council member. Those are an important part of participating in our democracy, especially when you see things that are fundamentally un-American. And I think what we have to try to do is to find some common American ground again. America is not a place where we denigrate women. America is not a place where we tell people that they're not qualified to serve because their parents come from Mexico. America is not a place where we mock disabilities. And certainly not the America that exists here in Los Angeles. So I intend to continue to show
you got the knife. Mine was only 3 months. And this is not fall out. He was gonna sell the blue one, but the gray one's better. The one that me got mad at, and then her dad brought her karaoke. We took one of them in Ocean City. But we went 2 times to Ocean City. The first time was with the blue one. In the summer. We do. We do. Yes. The summer, yes, we did. 2 times. I know. We went 1 time when it was September. Okay, guys, right then. A long back then. Yes, that was. You always want to argue about something and win it. Do it. Because you just want to behind this, but she's not going to win it. You just want to. I like the hat. No, cool. Something. Oh, he really had big ears. I know that's right. Yeah, I just got punched in this parade. This place is burnt. Oh yeah, I'm used to it.
Just a fair name. In law enforcement, there was a poem written by an unknown author called "This Is Your Badge." The poem goes on to say that the badge transforms you from a citizen to a centurion, guardian of the safety and welfare of others. Display of dignity, wear it with pride, and defend its principles. Emulate the qualities it represents. Kathy, Darren did all these things and much, much more. He wore the badge with honor, with integrity, respect, and in turn, he earned the respect of others. I was honored to know him, and I want you to know that you and the rest of the family and the kids will always be part of the Bishola Police Department family. On the lighter side, I should have started with that. But I must admit, one thing that we had, and Darren and I had a difference on, was our choice of football teams. All right. This is what I'm going to tell you exactly. He was a Denver Broncos fan, die-hard in the role, never changed. And I was a Dallas Cowboys fan. You know, Dallas, I know, Dallas is a team you either love or you hate. There's no advance, there's no in between. You love or hate them. And Darren and I would have lengthy discussions coming into my office and saying, Chief, you got a minute? And I knew that that wasn't going to be a minute. So, he just was trying to figure out which team was better. I'm not sure which one it was, but last year, winning the Super Bowl, I bowed to him and said, you guys are the best team. But he came into my office with that quiet sense of humor and told me that he had to admit this year he liked the Dallas Cowboys just a little bit. Now I'm almost out of my chair falling backwards going, I can't believe you like the Dallas Cowboys. He goes, well, I really don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I like what the owner did regarding his stance on the national anthem. I agree with him. I knew exactly where he was coming from. You see, Darren was a patriot. He not only served this great community, he served his country as well as a military police officer in the United States Air Force. He took great pride with the police department. Excuse me.
And it's got the front window there. Well, we're going to have to pull out because he has got us in his sights.
The troops take cover down streets and in between homes. They have the superior hardware, but the snipers know the soft spots. A bullet through our Humvee's radiator means it's now out of action. The city's residents who can are frantically getting out of the battle zone. They're terrified, unsure who to trust, and have no idea where they're going or when they'll be back.
وداعش ما خلى شيء ما سوى بينا بهدلنا دمرنا الله يهجم بيتهم والله العظيم
كل شيء جبر كان علينا.
Right now, though, the civilians feel under attack from everywhere. The imperative is just to stay alive, however they can. They also have drones mapping out the militant positions.
ملازم علي من فولاد.
These are two of the IS snipers, but just these two can hold back dozens of troops, and they're extremists prepared to die. The Iraqi special forces are moving closer to the Tigris River, which runs through Mosul, but the extremists aren't giving up. The red tracer fire you see is from the militants hiding in the houses. We take refuge with a family on the edge of Abajir district. While the battle rages outside their gate. The children don't even flinch now at the sounds of warfare. They've been trapped here for 2 days under fire. We find one of the women cowering under the kitchen sink.
It's okay. It's okay. Are you alright? You alright? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. Shh. It's okay. 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 Okay. No. Don't do it. It's okay. It's okay.
The eldest son, who's 19, tells us 4 days ago his head was shaved by IS police after he was caught smoking. The family haven't had electricity for nearly 2 weeks after IS cut off the power. The father says his 16-year-old son has disappeared whilst out selling chocolate. They're not sure where he is. Young men of fighting age are targets for both sides. Their other son saw 3 bodies left hanging from a Mosul bridge.
اكو مرقة اخضر لابسين بنطلون من عسكري معلقينهم من رجلينهم شات لهم طلقات براسهم واحد منهم شاد يدينهم واحد فالت يد مسويه شويد ومربوطه.
The militants are constantly shifting their fighters from home to home. But each house needs to be checked before they move on, and even then the Iraqis suspect the extremists are hiding amongst the Mosul residents. Moments after taking Abajir, there's a call to all males. They're ordered out of their homes with their ID documents. They're to be checked by the troops for IS infiltrators. Whole corners of homes have been ripped out to build the military defences. This is progress for the Iraqi Special Forces, a slow one, but they're confident.
التنفيذ على الأرض يتم بشكل صحيح. لا نستمر إن شاء الله يعني نوصل بسرعة إن شاء الله.
Mosul's residents fleeing the fighting are at least alive, but the inner city battle is claiming more casualties. No one ever thought this was going to be easy. Alex Crawford, Sky News, with the Iraqi Special Forces in Mosul.
And with Sky's special correspondent Alex Crawford in Mosul, were producer Nick Ludlam, cameraman Gawain McLucky, and producers Ada Kata and Mike Mulwiney. Now, the United Nations has said 2016 will very likely be the hottest year on record, and the rising temperatures will cause more frequent flooding, heat waves and drought. It says carbon emissions are still the biggest factor in the planet's warming. And one of the largest emitters, of course, is America, and its new president-elect Donald Trump has said climate change is a hoax. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
An unprecedented heat wave in India with temperatures hitting 51 degrees, near record melting of Arctic sea ice, and a mass die-off of coral reefs from extraordinarily warm water. It has been a record year for heat and the wild weather it triggers. New figures from the World Meteorological Organization show 2016 is on track for a 1.2 degree rise in the global temperature above pre-industrial levels. Some of it is due to the El Niño ocean current in the Pacific, but the overwhelming majority of scientists blame greenhouse gases.
We are seeing aspects of climate change going on across the
as David Axelrod was, as Carl Rove was,
and we can say with more and more confidence they are down to our activities.
Another batch of figures offers some hope. Carbon dioxide emissions had been rising by 2.4% a year when China was building 2 coal power stations a week. But since 2013, emissions have leveled off at 36.4 billion tons as the Chinese economy slowed and the US switched from coal to gas.
We're going to
the Paris Climate Agreement and stop.
But Donald Trump is the wild card.
Unbelievable.
The newly elected US president says climate change is a hoax. He's tweeted the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive. His actions in the White House will be closely watched by scientists.
It depends really now whether Donald Trump is going to revert back to coal in the US or whether he has an opportunity here to push business promises towards help renewable energy, help carbon capture and storage. So we'll have to see what he does.
At the climate change conference in Morocco, campaigners are warning there can be no turning back. But power from the wind and sun will soon be cheaper than fossil fuels. And it's simple economics that may win over the new president to clean energy. Thomas